Do you have a paranormal encounter you'd like to share with us? Send us an email with your story for a chance of it being featured on Weird World. Step into a realm where the past and present blur in two more true and captivating accounts of time slips. Follow Oscar Brennan as his daily commute through Yorkshire reveals glimpses of his neighbourhood as it stood in the 19th century, and join Rhys Faulkner in an ancient Iron Age fort where the night air is shattered by the spectral charge of Roman cavalry. Such stories invite us to question the fabric of time and the path we navigate through it. Yorkshire Timeslip. Yorkshire, England, has long been known for its rich industrial history, with old mills and factories dotting the landscape of many of its towns and cities. One such town, located in the heart of Yorkshire, is home to an old textile mill dating back to the 1870s. The massive 4-storey brick structure towers over the surrounding neighbourhood, its imposing facade a reminder of the rise and fall of the British textile industry. While the lower floors of the old mill now house various businesses, the upper floors have been converted into flats for residential living. Oscar, a lifelong Yorkshire local, has worked in the former textile mill for the past 5 years as an office manager on the second floor. His daily routine consists of a short walk from his flat to the mill, passing by the usual shops and restaurants on the main road adjacent to the mill. The day of the incident began as an average day for Oscar and took place in January 2024. He locked the door to his flat and made his way down the stairs and out onto the street, heading in the direction of the mill for another day's work. As he walked along the main road, however, he was met by an unusual sight: a crowd of onlookers blocking the road, surrounding a fire truck parked in front of a burned-out car. Wanting to avoid the crowd, Oscar decided to take a shortcut down a narrow side street which ran behind the row of shops on the main road. This cobbled back street was short, with just a single garage on the left side before reconnecting with the main road. But when Oscar emerged back onto the main road, something was strangely off. Although the old textile mill loomed in the distance, as it had always done, the windows appeared changed somehow. At first he couldn't put his finger on it, but then he noticed that the windows to the flats on the higher levels were gone, and the modern white window designs had been replaced by an older style of window. Oscar wondered if it was being renovated to bring back the classic look of the building. However, he soon noticed an even more peculiar modification. The takeaway shop on the corner, which he passed by every day, was nowhere to be seen. In its place stood what looked to be a shoe repair shop, in a building that looked very different to the one he had seen hundreds of times before. Thinking he must have taken a wrong turn and ended up on the wrong street, Oscar hurried back down the cobbled side street from which he had just come. Passing the garage once again, though, he was certain he had gone the right way and decided to turn back. But upon his return to the main road, everything appeared back to normal. The takeaway shop was back in its usual spot in place of the unusual building, and the textile mill's windows were their standard modern appearance. Oscar stood befuddled, unable to explain the strange alterations to the neighbourhood he had just witnessed. A quick glance at his watch told him he was going to be late for work, so he reluctantly continued on his way, making a mental note to research possible explanations for the events of that morning. Later that evening, still puzzled by his experience, Oscar decided to search online for similar accounts. He soon came across mentions of the phenomenon known as time slips, incidents in which a person seems to briefly travel into the past, witnessing people, places and things as they appeared many years or decades earlier. The more he read about time slips, the more Oscar came to believe the phenomenon could explain what had happened to him that morning. The changed style of the textile mill windows, the missing takeaway shop, and the old-fashioned shoe repair building all suggested he had briefly glimpsed the neighbourhood as it existed sometime in the late 19th or early 20th century. Over the next few days, Oscar immersed himself in videos, podcasts, and written reports about time slips, searching for more accounts similar to his own. Try as he might, Oscar could find no reasonable explanation for what he had witnessed other than a brief time slip into the past. The cobbled side street from which he had emerged both times had shown no visible changes, ruling out the possibility he had simply lost his way. And he had never before seen a building or business resembling that old shoe repair shop on the main corner, let alone in the entire surrounding area, which he knew very well. For Oscar, the time slip explanation seemed like the only rational possibility, as outlandish as it may have sounded to him. While certainly shocking and disorienting for those who experience them, time slips are usually brief events, lasting only a matter of minutes. Oscar's glimpse into the neighbourhood's past was similarly fleeting, just long enough for him to note the altered mill and replaced takeaway shop before he found himself back in the present day. Though undoubtedly disturbing in the moment, he suffered no lasting ill effects from his brush with the paranormal. Nevertheless, the event left a profound impression on him. In the weeks that followed, Oscar found himself scrutinising the details of his surroundings on his daily walks to the old mill, half expecting to tumble through time once again. But the present remained fixed, and no amount of searching uncovered any further clues about the old shoe repair shop he had seen that morning. With no concrete evidence, Oscar realised there was little he could do beyond accepting what had happened and moving on with life as normal. Yet some questions still lingered in Oscar's mind. Had the morning's fire truck and burning vehicle somehow triggered the time slip, either directly or simply by prompting him to take an alternate route? Or was it mere coincidence that he stumbled into the past on that particular day? And if time slips were possible, could they transport a person much further back than a century or two? It seemed strange to him that most time slips reported by people like his were to the 19th or 20th century. Was there some limiting factor at play within the time slip phenomenon? Oscar regretted not having more thoroughly studied his surroundings while in the slip. Perhaps additional clues could have indicated just how far into the mill and surrounding area's history he had ventured. He thought it unfortunate that the fleeting nature of the phenomenon granted such little time for detailed observation and investigation. Oscar plans to reach out to the mill's owner and landlord in the hope they might possess photos capturing the building as it looked many decades ago, to help verify the authenticity of his vision of the building as it stood in the late 19th or early 20th century. Ancient cavalry. Tucked into the rolling hills of southern England lies an ancient Iron Age fort, its earthen trenches rising from the lush landscape. Constructed in around 500 BC by the native Celtic tribes, the ancient stronghold would later catch the eye of the invading Romans in the centuries to come. As the Romans surged northwards, they took interest in the strategic heights offered by the fort. In around 45 AD, part of the Second Augusta Legion was dispatched to establish a garrison there. For decades, Roman cavalry units rode out from the fort on patrols to subdue local tribes and project imperial might. The thunderous pounding of hooves and the resonant clamour of the cavalry would have been an impressive and familiar spectacle. But time weathered away the might of Rome, and the legionnaires eventually abandoned the far-flung fort. Although used for centuries after by local farmers, the old fort gradually faded into obscurity. Fast forward to 2014. A local man named Rhys Faulkner, in his mid-30s, had recently gone through a painful breakup and found himself temporarily homeless after leaving his partner. He opted to discreetly camp inside the ancient fort walls while he got back on his feet. Rhys had secured a job and was making use of a local gym for showers and exercise. His camping gear allowed him to sleep undetected within the deep ditches of the fort interior. On the night of March 15th, Rhys was resting in his tent, which he had pitched near what he later determined to be the original eastern entrance. The skies were clear and a cold breeze funneled through the site. As Rhys attempted to fall asleep, he was startled fully awake by a sound that made his hair stand on end. The thunderous hoofbeats of horses approaching from the interior of the fort. He estimates that around 30 horses were galloping towards him, judging by the stomach-churning rumble. As the phantom cavalry drew nearer, Rhys could discern their acceleration into a full dash, the rhythm of iron-shod hooves pounding the earth. They sounded tightly packed, their gear clinking audibly as they flew past him toward the fort exit. He lay petrified as the hoofbeats finally faded into the distance. Emerging at dawn, Rhys scoured the ground for hoofprints, but found no trace of any within his proximity. Strangely, he had also heard no voices amidst the stomps, which he found disappointing, as he thought it might have helped him to determine who exactly these horsemen were. In the days following, Rhys struggled to explain what he had heard. He considers it unlikely to have been a vivid dream, as the auditory details were so sharp and consistent. Through researching his experience online, he discovered other accounts of time slips. Intriguingly, he found time slips at Roman military sites to be among some of the most reported. Though the evidence was only anecdotal, Rhys found himself increasingly convinced that what he heard was a ghostly cavalry detachment from the days when Roman soldiers rode out from that very fort into the surrounding valley. The experience continues to leave him with a profound sense of having glimpsed the continuity between past and present, bridging eras for one fleeting moment. Whether his experience was an illusion or reality, Rhys knows that no amount of scepticism can erase the galloping hoofbeats heard that night at the ancient fort. For him, a window had briefly cracked open, allowing the long silent past to thunder vividly back into existence.